The Pride That Burns, Part 1. The Diplomatic Mission. The gleaming spires of New Geneva stretched toward the azure sky as the Zephyrian diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere. Kira Velmont pressed her palm against the viewport, watching the primitive human structures grow larger below. Despite their crude architecture, she had to admit there was a certain charm to their simplicity. "Remember, Kira," Ambassador Thane Korath's deep voice resonated behind her. "We are here to establish peace, not to judge their backward ways." Kira turned from the window, her silver hair catching the artificial light. At 26 Earth years, she was the youngest diplomat ever chosen for such a crucial mission. Her violet eyes, a mark of her noble Zephyrian lineage, reflected both pride and barely concealed disdain. "Of course, Ambassador. Though I fail to see how beings who still rely on external machinery for healing can offer us anything of value." Thane's weathered features creased into a frown. "Their resilience has kept them alive despite their limitations. Perhaps there's something to learn from that." The landing platform bustled with activity as human officials prepared to greet them. Among the crowd, one figure caught Kira's attention. Oi. Tall man in a military uniform, his dark hair and strong jawline giving him an almost appealing appearance. For a human, Captain James Rivera stepped forward as the Zephyrian delegation descended the ramp. He had studied their culture extensively, knew their customs demanded respect and formality. Yet something about the young female diplomat made his carefully prepared words catch in his throat. "Welcome to Earth," he said, offering the traditional Zephyrian greeting with hands pressed together. "I am Captain Rivera, your liaison during this historic visit." Kira's violet eyes met his brown ones, and for a moment she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. She quickly suppressed it. "Captain Rivera, I trust your people have prepared adequate accommodations, given your limitations." James smiled, despite the barely veiled insult. "We've done our best to ensure your comfort. Dr. Elena Vasquez will be giving you a tour of our medical research facility this afternoon, one of our proudest achievements." "How quaint," Kira replied, though something in his smile made her pulse quicken unexpectedly. The research facility impressed even Kira's skeptical eye. Clean lines, advanced equipment, and bustling scientists working with focused intensity. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a brilliant woman in her 40s with kind eyes and premature gray streaks, led the tour with obvious passion. "This is our nanomedicine laboratory," Elena explained, gesturing to a room filled with microscopic assemblers. "We've developed nanobots capable of cellular repair at the molecular level. They can heal most injuries within minutes." Kira scoffed quietly. "Crude mechanical intervention. On Zephyr, our bodies naturally regenerate through bioresonance fields." "Fascinating," Elena responded genuinely. "I'd love to learn more about your methods." James walked beside Kira, noting how she seemed to unconsciously lean slightly in his direction when he spoke. "You might be surprised by human ingenuity," he said softly. "We've had to be creative to survive." Before Kira could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed red as scientists rushed toward the exits. "Containment breach in Lab 7, someone shouted. The explosion came without warning. A massive blast from the experimental quantum lab sent shockwaves through the building. Kira found herself thrown against a wall as debris rained down around them. Pain lanced through her side, and she tasted blood. James was beside her in an instant, his hands gentle but firm as he checked her injuries. "Don't move," he commanded, his military training taking over. "Elena, we need medical assistance here now." Dr. Vasquez appeared with a portable scanner, her face grave as she read the results. "Internal bleeding, possible organ damage. We need to get her to the medical bay immediately." "I'm fine," Kira gasped, struggling to sit up. Purple blood, darker than human red, stained her elegant diplomatic robes. "Just get me back to the ship." "You're not fine," James said firmly, surprising her with the authority in his voice. "You could die from these injuries." Elena knelt beside them, a small device in her hand. I can deploy emergency nanobots right now. They'll stop the bleeding and begin repairs immediately. You'll be completely healed within the hour. Kira's eyes widened in horror. No, I won't have your primitive machines crawling through my body. Zephyrian physiology is beyond your understanding. You could kill me with your crude methods. Kira, please, James pleaded, and something in the way he said her name made her heart race despite the pain. Let us help you. My people have survived for millennia without human interference, she spat, though her voice was weakening. I'll return to the ship for proper healing. Elena's medical scanner showed Kira's life signs fluctuating dangerously. At least let me stabilize you for transport. The bleeding. No! Kira's voice echoed with royal authority despite her condition. I will not be touched by human medicine. Captain Rivera, I demand immediate transport to my vessel. James looked. Between the stubborn alien diplomat and the concerned doctor, something in Kira's violet eyes, pain, fear, and beneath it all a vulnerability she was desperately trying to hide, made his chest tighten. As you wish, he said quietly, though every instinct screamed against it. But know that our offer of help stands always. As they prepared the emergency transport, Kira caught James's hand with surprising strength. For a moment, her mask of superiority slipped, revealing something raw and uncertain beneath. Thank you for your concern, Captain, she whispered. But my people's way is the only way I know. James squeezed her hand gently. Sometimes the only way we know isn't the best way. As Kira was carried toward the Zephyrian ship, her last conscious thought was of the human captain's warm brown eyes and the strange ache in her chest that had nothing to do with her injuries. Purple glow of the regeneration field bathed her pale skin, and for the first hours she felt vindicated in her choice. See? She whispered to herself as the initial pain subsided. Human medicine is nothing compared to our ancient wisdom. Ambassador, Thane stood beside her pod, his expression troubled. The human captain has sent 17 communication requests in the past 4 hours. He seems genuinely concerned for your welfare. Kira's heart fluttered unexpectedly at the mention of James. Humans always overreact. It's part of their primitive, emotional responses. But even as she spoke, she found herself wondering what James was doing at that moment. Was he truly worried about her? The way he had held her hand, the gentleness in his touch despite his military bearing. It had awakened something within her that she couldn't quite name. 3 days into the journey home, Kira felt strong enough to leave the medical bay. The crystalline formations had done their work, sealing her wounds and restoring her damaged organs. She moved through the ship with renewed confidence, eager to put the embarrassing incident behind her. You see, Ambassador? She said, finding Thane in his quarters reviewing diplomatic protocols. Zephyrian medicine succeeded where human technology would have failed. I'll recover completely without any foreign contamination in my system. Thane looked up from his datapad, noting the color in her cheeks and the steadiness of her gait. Indeed, it appears the treatment was successful. Perhaps we underestimated the severity of your injuries. That night, as Kira lay in her quarters, she found her thoughts drifting to Earth. To the research facility with its bustling energy, to Dr. Vasquez's genuine enthusiasm for her work, and, most persistently, to Captain Rivera. She remembered the warmth of his hand, the concern in his eyes, the way he had spoken her name with such tenderness. She shook her head, trying to dispel such foolish thoughts. A Zephyrian noble could never have feelings for a human. It was unthinkable, against everything she had been taught about their species' natural hierarchy. On the 5th day, the first symptoms appeared. Kira woke with a strange tingling sensation in her extremities. Her vision seemed slightly blurred, and there was an odd, metallic taste in her mouth. She dismissed it as residual effects from the healing process and went about her daily routine. By evening, the tingling had become a burning sensation that seemed to pulse through her veins. The ship's medical scanner showed unusual cellular activity. Something was wrong with the crystalline matrix that had sealed her wounds. It's probably just a minor adjustment phase, the ship's medical AI announced in its calm, synthetic voice. The bioresonance fields are still active. Your body is simply integrating the healing crystals. But Kira knew her own body, and this felt different. Wrong. The burning sensation intensified, and she found herself thinking of James's words. Sometimes the only way we know isn't the best way. She pushed the thought away. She was Zephyrian, nobility. Her people had perfected healing arts when humans were still primitive savages. This was just a temporary setback. On the 7th day, she could no longer hide her condition. The crystalline formations weren't just failing, they were being consumed by something else, something that was spreading through her body like wildfire. Her temperature fluctuated wildly, and strange rashes appeared on her skin, pulsing with an unnatural light. "Ambassador," she called weakly from her quarters, finally admitting she needed help. Thane arrived to find her collapsed on the floor, her body convulsing as waves of agony swept through her. The healing crystals that had once glowed with therapeutic light now flickered erratically, their structure breaking down. "Get me to the medical bay," she gasped, clutching at his robes. "Something's wrong. The healing, it's not working." The ship's most advanced medical systems confirmed Kira's worst fears. An unknown pathogen, something that had been dormant in her system since the explosion, had awakened and was now consuming the crystalline matrix from within. Worse, it was adapting, using the bioresonance energy to fuel its own growth. "This is unprecedented," the medical AI reported. "The pathogen appears to be artificial in nature, possibly a byproduct of the explosion you experienced on Earth. Our bioresonance healing has inadvertently provided it with an energy source." Kira's mind reeled. An artificial pathogen? From the human facility? But that would mean the nanobots, she whispered, understanding flooding through her despite the pain. Dr. Vasquez's nanobots could have neutralized this before it took hold. The irony was bitter as poison. In refusing human medicine, she had allowed something far worse to take root in her body. The very pride that had made her reject their help was now potentially killing her. As another wave of agony swept through her, she found herself crying out for the one person who had shown her genuine kindness despite her arrogance. "James!" Thane leaned close, his own fear evident. "Kira, we must contact the humans. Their technology might be the only thing that can save you." "No," she whispered, though the word lacked conviction. "I won't. I can't let them see me like this. Weak, helpless. Everything I said about their primitive medicine. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford," Thane said gently. "That human captain called you by name 17 times. Whatever you think of their species, he cares about you." Kira closed her eyes, remembering James's touch, his voice, the way he had looked at her as if she were precious rather than alien. The memory brought both comfort and shame. How could she face him now, after everything she had said about human inferiority? But as the pathogen continued its relentless assault on her body, consuming her from within, she began to realize that her choice might not be between pride and humility, but between life and death. Send a message," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. Tell them I may have been wrong." As unconsciousness claimed her, her last coherent thought was a prayer to whatever gods might listen that James Rivera would still care enough to help the arrogant alien who had scorned his people's greatest gift. The Zephyrian ship's emergency beacon cut through space like a cry for help, its signal reaching Earth's monitoring stations within hours. Captain James Rivera was in his quarters, reviewing diplomatic reports that suddenly seemed trivial when the communication came through. "Captain," his aide's voice crackled over the intercom, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian vessel. It's about the diplomat." James was on his feet before the words finished registering. He'd thought about Kira every day since she'd left. Her violet eyes, her stubborn pride, the brief moment of vulnerability when she'd taken his hand. Something in his chest had felt hollow since her departure, a feeling he'd tried unsuccessfully to ignore. The holographic image of Ambassador Thane materialized in the communication center, his usually composed features haggard with worry and exhaustion. "Captain Rivera," Thane began without preamble, "I'm calling to request immediate medical assistance. Kira is... she's dying." The words hit James like a physical blow. What happened? Is it her injuries from the explosion? Worse, some kind of artificial pathogen that our healing crystals cannot combat. It's consuming her from within, using our own bioresonance energy to strengthen itself. Thane's voice carried the weight of desperate admission. "She believes your nanobots might be the only treatment that can save her." James was already moving toward the medical bay, his mind racing. "We'll prepare immediately. How long before you can return to Earth?" 18 hours at maximum speed, but Captain..." Thane hesitated. "She's ashamed. She said terrible things about human medicine, about your people's capabilities. She's afraid to face you." "Tell her," James said firmly, "that none of that matters now. Just get her here alive." 18 hours felt like 18 years. James worked alongside Dr. Vasquez and her team, adapting their nanobots for Zephyrian physiology, running countless simulations, preparing for every possible scenario, but it was the waiting that nearly killed him. Aboard the Zephyrian ship, Kira drifted in and out of consciousness, her body racked by hallucinations as the pathogen attacked her nervous system. In her fevered dreams, she saw James's face, sometimes kind and concerned, sometimes disappointed and accusatory. "You called us primitive," Dream James said, his brown eyes cold. "You said our medicine was crude. Why should we help you now?" "I was wrong," she whispered to the empty air around her medical pod. "I was so wrong about everything." The hallucinations grew worse as her condition deteriorated. She saw her homeworld burning, consumed by the same artificial fire that was eating her alive. She saw her people's great bioresonance chambers crumbling, their ancient wisdom proven inadequate against a threat they didn't understand. "Pride," she gasped during a moment of clarity, tears streaming down her fevered face. "My pride is killing me." But worse than the physical agony was the emotional torment. She thought of James's genuine kindness, his patient attempts to bridge the gap between their species, and how she had thrown it back in his face with arrogance and prejudice. "I wanted him to respect me," she confessed to Thane during one of his visits to her bedside. "But I was so busy proving my superiority that I never gave him a chance to see who I really am." "And who are you, really?" Thane asked gently. Kira was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Scared. Lonely. So desperate to live up to my people's expectations that I forgot to be worthy of them." The pathogen had evolved, becoming more aggressive as it sensed her weakening defenses. Strange growths appeared under her skin, pulsing with the same artificial light that had once seemed like successful healing. Her screams echoed through the ship's corridors as waves of agony tore through her body. "Make it stop," she begged, clawing at her own skin. "Please make it stop." But Zephyrian medicine had reached its limits. Their bioresonance fields, their crystalline matrices, their ancient healing wisdom, none of it could combat something that had been designed by a completely different scientific paradigm. As they entered Earth's solar system, Kira's vital signs began failing catastrophically. Her heart struggled to pump blood that was becoming more pathogen than plasma. Her lungs fought to process oxygen through airways that were being consumed from within. "She's going into systematic organ failure," the medical AI reported with clinical detachment. Estimated time to complete physiological collapse, 4 hours. Thane stood over her convulsing form, feeling helpless for the first time in his long diplomatic career. "Hold on, Kira. We're almost there. The humans will save you." But Kira was beyond hearing him. She was lost in a nightmare landscape where every breath was agony, where her own body had become a battlefield between failing healing crystals and an enemy that grew stronger with each passing moment. In her delirium, she saw James one more time. Not the accusatory figure of her guilt-ridden dreams, but the real James, the man who had held her hand and spoken her name with tenderness, who had offered help without expecting anything in return. I'm sorry, she whispered to his image. I'm so sorry. I was too proud to see your kindness for what it was. The ship's alarms began blaring as they approached Earth. Emergency signals flooded the communication channels. And somewhere in the depths of her failing consciousness, Kira felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe pride didn't have to be the last thing she ever felt. Maybe love, for that's what she finally recognized the ache in her chest to be. Maybe love could still save her. The emergency landing at New Geneva's medical facility was chaos barely contained by military precision. James watched the Zephyrian ship descend, his heart pounding as emergency teams prepared for immediate transport. Dr. Vasquez stood beside him, her nanobots calibrated and ready, though they both knew they were working with incomplete data about Zephyrian physiology. She's been unconscious for the last 6 hours, Thane reported as Kira's medical pod was rushed from the ship to the human facility. Through the transparent aluminum, James could see her still form, her once radiant skin now mottled with strange, pulsing growths. The sight made his chest tighten with fear and rage at his own helplessness. What's her current status? Dr. Vasquez asked, her professional demeanor masking the same urgency James felt. Critical. The pathogen has infiltrated her major organ systems. Our healing crystals are not just failing, they're feeding the infection. Thane's voice carried the weight of defeated pride. She was right to call it artificial. It appears designed specifically to exploit bioresonance energy. In the isolation chamber, Kira's body convulsed as another wave of the infection swept through her. Even unconscious, her face contorted in agony, and James had to fight the urge to break protocol and go to her side. We need to act fast, Elena said, reviewing the scans. The nanobots can target the pathogen, but they'll need to completely replace her current healing matrix. It's going to be traumatic for her system. Do it, James said immediately. Captain, you don't understand. The procedure could kill her. We're talking about introducing billions of nanobots into an alien physiology we don't fully understand, while simultaneously fighting an infection that's already compromised her vital organs. James looked through the chamber window at Kira's still form. Even fighting for her life, even covered in the evidence of systemic failure, she was beautiful. More than that, she was brave, intelligent, and underneath all that pride, he had glimpsed a vulnerability that called to something deep in his soul. She trusted us enough to come back, he said quietly. We can't let her down. Dr. Vasquez nodded, grimly. Then we'd better get started. The next few hours will determine if human medicine is as primitive as she believed. The first injection of nanobots caused Kira's body to convulse violently. Even unconscious, she seemed to sense the foreign presence in her bloodstream. The monitors shrieked as her vital signs spiked erratically. Her immune system is trying to reject the nanobots, Elena reported, adjusting the programming in real time. I'm modifying their stealth protocols. James stood at the observation window, his hands pressed against the glass. Come on, Kira. Fight. I know you're stronger than this. As if hearing him, Kira's convulsions began to settle. The nanobots were finding their targets now, beginning the systematic destruction of the pathogen that had been consuming her from within. But the damage was extensive, and the healing process would be long and dangerous. Hours passed in tense vigil. James refused to leave the observation area, watching as teams of doctors and technicians monitored every aspect of Kira's treatment. Slowly, incrementally, her vital signs began to stabilize. The nanobots are working, Elena announced, exhaustion clear in her voice. They're eliminating the pathogen and beginning cellular repair. But she's been through tremendous trauma. Recovery will take time. It was during the 3rd day of treatment that Kira finally regained consciousness. James was at her bedside immediately, having convinced Elena to let him into the sterile chamber. James? Her voice was barely a whisper, her violet eyes struggling to focus. I'm here, he said, taking her hand carefully, mindful of the medical equipment surrounding her. You're safe now. The nanobots are working. You're going to be okay. Tears began streaming down her face. I was so wrong, so stupid and proud and wrong. I nearly died because I couldn't admit that human medicine might be better than ours. Shh, James soothed, brushing the tears from her cheeks. That doesn't matter now. All that matters is that you're alive. It matters to me, she said, her grip on his hand surprisingly strong. I said terrible things about your people, about your capabilities. I was so busy trying to prove my superiority that I nearly threw away the most precious thing I'd ever found. What's that? He asked, though something in her eyes already told him the answer. You, she whispered. The way you looked at me, treated me with kindness even when I was insufferable. I think I was falling in love with you from the moment we met, and I was too proud to admit it even to myself. James felt his heart skip a beat. He'd hoped, but hearing her say the words made something warm and bright bloom in his chest. Kira, I know it's impossible, she continued quickly. A Zephyrian noble and a human soldier. Our peoples have just begun to trust each other. It would be scandalous, maybe even politically dangerous. James silenced her with a gentle finger against her lips. Do you remember what I told you on Earth? Sometimes the only way we know isn't the best way. She looked up at him with wonder, and hope warring in her violet eyes. I've been thinking about you every day since you left, he continued. The way you challenged everything I thought I knew about your people. The glimpses of who you really are beneath all that royal training. The courage it took to come back here when you could have died trying to maintain your pride. James, I love you, he said simply. I love your strength, your intelligence, even your stubborn pride when it's not nearly killing you, and if you'll have me, I want to be part of whatever comes next. Kira's tears were flowing freely now, but they were tears of joy rather than pain. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want to try. I want to learn to be worthy of the love you're offering. As James leaned down to kiss her gently, careful not to disturb the medical equipment, Kira realized that her healing had begun long before the nanobots entered her system. It had started the moment she chose to trust in human kindness over Zephyrian pride. The path ahead would be challenging. 2 different species, 2 different worlds, and all the political complications that would bring. But as she felt James's warm lips against hers and the steady beat of his heart against her palm, Kira knew they would face those challenges together. 6 months after nearly dying from her own prejudice, Kira stood before the joint Human-Zephyrian Medical Council, her posture straight, but her arrogance replaced by hard-won wisdom. The scars from her ordeal were invisible now. The nanobots had ensured perfect healing, but the lessons remained etched in her heart. The integration of human nanotechnology with Zephyrian bioresonance healing represents more than just medical advancement, she reported to the assembled council members. Both human and alien, it represents the evolution of our understanding about what it means to be truly advanced. Dr. Elena Vasquez smiled from the human delegation, remembering the proud young diplomat who had once scorned their primitive medicine. Beside Elena, Captain Rivera, now Director Rivera having been promoted to head of interspecies relations, watched Kira with obvious pride and affection. The hybrid treatment protocol we've developed combines the best of both our civilizations, Kira continued. Human nanobots provide precise, targeted intervention while Zephyrian bioresonance creates an optimal healing environment. Neither approach alone could have achieved what we've accomplished together. Ambassador Thane nodded approvingly. In the month since Kira's recovery, he had watched her transform from an arrogant young noble into a true diplomat, one who understood that strength came not from superiority, but from the wisdom to recognize and appreciate differences. After the formal presentation, Kira found herself in the facility's memorial garden with James. The same explosion that had nearly killed her had also claimed the lives of 3 human researchers, and their names were now inscribed on a simple, granite wall surrounded by earth flowers and Zephyrian memory crystals. Do you ever regret it? James asked, his arm around her shoulders as they stood before the memorial. Coming back, admitting you were wrong. I know it couldn't have been easy for someone raised with your beliefs. Kira leaned into his warmth, still amazed by how natural it felt to be held by him. Their relationship had faced significant opposition from conservative factions on both worlds, but their love had proven stronger than political prejudice. "I regret the time I wasted," she said honestly. "I regret the pain I caused myself and others through my arrogance, but coming back, falling in love with you, those are the only decisions I've ever made that feel completely right." She turned in his arms, her violet eyes meeting his brown ones. "You know what I realized while I was dying? I wasn't afraid of death. I was afraid of dying without ever having truly lived. I'd spent my whole life trying to be what others expected rather than discovering who I really was." "And who are you really?" James asked, echoing Thane's question from months ago. "Someone who loves learning," Kira replied with a smile. "Someone who finds beauty in differences rather than threats. Someone who believes that the best solutions come from combining different perspectives rather than insisting on the superiority of any single approach." James kissed her forehead gently. "Someone who's brave enough to admit when she's wrong and strong enough to change." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Dr. Vasquez approaching with a data pad and an expression of barely contained excitement. "Sorry to interrupt," Elena said, "but I wanted to share the latest results from the joint research program. The hybrid healing protocol has shown a 97% success rate across both species. We're ready to begin implementation across all medical facilities." Kira took the pad, reviewing the data with the same intensity she had once applied to dismissing human capabilities. "These results exceed even our most optimistic projections. What about the political implications?" "That's where you come in," Elena replied. "Both governments want you to head the new Department of Interspecies Medical Cooperation. You'd be responsible for training medical personnel, establishing protocols, and serving as liaison between our research communities." James squeezed Kira's hand encouragingly. "It's perfect for you. You understand both approaches. You've experienced firsthand what cooperation can achieve, and you have the diplomatic skills to navigate the political complexities." Kira was quiet for a moment, considering the enormity of what was being offered. A year ago, she would have seen such a position as beneath her station, a Zephyrian noble working as an equal partner with humans, rather than as their superior. Now she recognized it as the opportunity of a lifetime. "I accept," she said, then looked at James with sudden concern. "But what about us? The position would require extensive travel between Earth and Zephyr." "Actually," James said with a grin that suggested he'd been planning this moment, "I've been offered the position of military liaison to the new department. We'd be working together." Kira stared at him in amazement. "You'd leave your career? On Earth, your family, your home?" "My career is interspecies relations now," he replied, "and you are my home." As they walked back toward the medical facility, past gardens where earth flowers grew beside Zephyrian memory crystals, Kira reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had nearly died from pride, been saved by humility, and found love in the space between worlds. The communication device in her pocket chimed with an incoming message from Zephyr, the first of what would undoubtedly be many challenges in her new role. But for the first time in her life, Kira approached an unknown situation without arrogance or fear, secure in the knowledge that she didn't need to have all the answers as long as she had the wisdom to seek them from the right sources. "Ready for the next adventure?" James asked, noting her thoughtful expression. Kira smiled, taking his hand as they prepared to face whatever diplomatic, medical, and personal challenges lay ahead. "With you? I'm ready for anything." Behind them, the memorial garden held both earth flowers and Zephyrian crystals in perfect harmony, a living symbol of what was possible when pride gave way to partnership and prejudice transformed into love. In the end, Kira had learned that true healing wasn't just about repairing damaged tissue or eliminating pathogens. Sometimes the most important healing happened in the spaces between hearts, in the moments when differences became bridges rather than barriers, and when love proved stronger than the fear of being wrong. The nanobots had saved her body, but James Rivera had saved her soul. And together, they would help heal the ancient wounds between their peoples. One patient, one protocol, and one breakthrough at a time.